What oddly specific rules have you seen that are probably only there because someone actually did it in the past? In rehab, our cotton swabs were taken away because a guy decided to jam one into his eardrum to get sent to the hospital and get painkillers. Every seemingly dumb rule we had in there had a backstory to it. OOFD used to work in a prison, and they had to ban Marmite spread because the inmates used the yeast to ferment alcohol, and Kit Kats because they used the foil wrappers for heroin. I always find it interesting how ingenious desperate people are. Rules like this in prisons, rehab, but also for anorexia wards are fascinating. Since COVID and things going digital, we now have a "you must wear clothes" rule. And we already had a pretty casual dress code. The Zoom virtual background is nice, but it really needs a virtual shirt option. Look for #ZoomDick on Twitter. Lol, someone didn't get the memo. Last year's company Christmas party email specifically stated to bring an extra pair of pants if you will be urinating in the first pair. I hope somebody really obviously brought an extra pair and just had them in a bag and refused to acknowledge it the entire night, and then maybe changed partway through to the other pants and just kept carrying on like nothing. Sounds like a pretty good party. I had the same biology professor for Bio I and II, because of me. The Bio 2 PowerPoint included a new excuse that wouldn't be accepted for missing late work. My drunk roommates threw it out while cleaning. Quote, "Hey, I was the source of one like this in a way. My professor had a system where he said, homework due by 12 o'clock. Quote, I turned it in about 10 minutes early, then realized I'd made a mistake. So I fixed it and uploaded the new one, which hit at 12 hours 0 minutes and 23 seconds or so." The next day he talked about how various people knew that if they opened the submission page, they could submit their homework after the deadline because the system only stopped you from accessing the page at the given time. He told us that such homework was going to be given a 0 despite being submitted. He then said there was one submission, however, that was submitted at 23 seconds past midnight. I will allow this one as I had not specified to the second that the homework had to be submitted. Henceforth, all homework must be submitted by 12 hours 0 minutes and 0 seconds. And gave me a smirk. I just gave him a cringy little salute and we had a chuckle. People clean when they're drunk. It is more of a high thing for me. Similar thing happened to my dad when he used to work at a shipyard. Their rules were you had steel-toe shoes or shoes with a wide enough gap between the tip of your foot and the tip of the shoe. He wore clown shoes. Every time the yard hired a new person, they were strictly enforced to never wear clown shoes. Absolutely no roller skates in the lab. My husband worked for a private lab startup and half the women there did roller derby. The lab was, as many are, a repurposed warehouse with nice smooth concrete floors. One of the women thought it would be fun to skate between machines. She got a lot done, but the boss figured OSHA wouldn't be too thrilled, so the sign went up a few days later. You could still wear your skates in the break room. I used to rollerblade all over my college campus as it was faster for getting around than walking. I was also too lazy to change into street shoes at the dining halls, etc. and would just coast all over the place. Come sophomore year, signs were put up in various campus buildings prohibiting rollerblades inside. Sounds like he dodged a bullet by nipping that in the bud. Can't imagine her falling, injuring herself, and potentially breaking equipment on top of that. No bouncing balls on city sidewalks, it scares horses. There are still laws around my parts that every business has a safe place to tie up your horse. I could legit go to any shop riding a horse and sue them cause they don't have a hitching post. On an Air France flight from Morocco to Mauritania, the flight attendant gave the safety brief in French at first. My French is not good, but my ears pricked up when I heard the words "feu de camp." I obviously discounted my translation as misunderstanding the brief until she went into the brief in English. We were given the standard safety brief on all aircraft, but at the end we were specifically reminded that there are to be no cooking or campfires lit on the plane at any time. Can you imagine your seatmate getting hungry and deciding to start a fire on an airplane to cook up some snacks? Yeah, I knew a guy that used to work for a major airline in Saudi Arabia back in the day. He had all sorts of stories, one of which was a plane full of observant Muslims was en route from their home country developing nation. Most did not speak English or Arabic to Saudi Arabia for the Hajj when someone busted out a hibachi grill and they had no clue why they were being dragged away from their dinner plans. If you go to the Bodleian Library in Oxford, which is open only to academics, you have to solemnly swear you will not light any fires in the library. At least this was true 20 years ago. I imagined poor students in the 16th century thinking they would just burn a few books to keep warm. No one will notice. On the French TGV, electrical outlets are limited to 100 W. Because several years ago a group of young people had the idea to make a raclette during their travel. The problem is a raclette machine consumes something like 1000–2000 W, which was interpreted by the train onboard computer as a shortcut, which triggered emergency brake, and blocking the train on track until the driver found out what the problem was. Pharmacy worker here. We have to specify to unwrap suppositories before insertion. Apparently someone thought the foil was part of it. Fellow pharmacy worker. To add on to yours, having to specify that suppositories are rectal only or vaginal. Sometimes people think all drugs go in your mouth and that the capsules that come with Spiriva inhalers are not meant to be swallowed. Well, that's how some dishwasher tablets work, so it is not a total stretch of the imagination. Pharmacy response. I don't know where you are, but I always thought it weird that buprenorphine prescriptions specify sugar-free even though buprenorphine is always sugar-free. There isn't a sugar version. It is almost like they decided to lump it with methadone despite them being completely different medications in effect and version. My father's hometown, Marion, Ohio, had a rule that you couldn't eat a donut while walking backwards. If I remember correctly, it had something to do with attracting police horses to lure them away from the police. More like luring the cop away from his horse car. I just saw another comment in this thread that the law in Arkansas about not being allowed to keep an ice cream cone in your pocket is for the same reason. I think those silly laws websites should come with explanations. It often makes it much more interesting. Please do not add dish detergent to the water fountains. Once witnessed someone dumping a whole box of soap, not sure if it was laundry, dish or other, into a mall fountain. The bubbles were 6 feet high before they shut it off. People used to do that to a small public fountain in the town where I grew up. Not a drinking fountain, a decorative outdoor one. But every once in a while, it would be full of bubbles. I thought it was great as a kid. Do not put 14 rolls of toilet paper in the toilet. Walmart 2019. 13 Then. Remove baby before collapsing stroller. Edit. For those asking what happens if you do this, I contacted some manufacturers who assured me that they tested it and that the strollers will be perfectly fine. We once got a piece of clothing for one of the kids and right on the label, I kid you not, remove child before washing. When I went shopping for strollers last year, there were a shocking number that had the collapse triggers in normal handle and pushing locations. In one, if you rotated the handle, like the one you push with, the whole thing would just fall in half suddenly. Better keep your wrists locked tight when using that thing. When my daughter was born, a sign on the countertop in the hospital room that said, "Do not place baby on counter. Falling risk if left unattended." I was flabbergasted. Edit. For clarity, this was the birthing room. At this hospital, as soon as everyone's stable, you're moved to your actual hospital room. The counter was next to where the fathers would stand by the bed. Poor kid, and poor tired parent. I may have accidentally tried this once, but more toddler than baby age, and the little one was okay. But it is one of those things that shouldn't need a rule, as you're unlikely to repeat it. In my lease, I had a clause to properly dispose of my used tampons. I asked why, and apparently my landlord had a tenant that caused $50,000 of damage because she threw her used tampons into the cabinet under the sink. She rented the apartment for years and there were 3+ years worth of used bloody tampons in there. The blood caused a bunch of damage akin to water damage to the bathroom. The floor under the cabinet was rotted through from bloody tampon storage. The thought of a steamy, gelatinous glob of blood gooping through the shitty linoleum and blooming a bloody clicker from The Last of Us makes me want to actively die. Why would she do that though? Why not just put it in the trash? Like and subscribe for more Reddit content. Watch the next video at the top of your screen.